I'd like to acknowledge the UWA Pro-Chancellor, the UWA Senior Deputy Vice-Chancellor, members of Senate, the Executive, distinguished guests, proud parents, families and friends, and most importantly, all of you sitting here at the front who are graduating today after many years of hard effort and learning. Hopefully you've also managed to find some time between all those lectures and assignments to enjoy the campus and reflect on life as you're growing up here. Thank you so much for welcoming me here this morning to present your graduation speech. I'm really touched, tremendously honoured, and actually, to be completely honest, terrified at the thought of trying to present some wise words to such a bright young cohort of graduates. It's been a pretty humbling experience for me over the past few weeks to sit down and try to write some meaningful words that you might be able to take away and hopefully use as you go on with your careers. I myself graduated from this wonderful university some nearly 30 years ago. I narrowly squeaked through what was called the Bachelor of Electronic and Electrical Engineering at a time when the university and the world was just starting to get connected to the internet. So if you'll indulge me, I've got a few war stories to share with you and some insights that you'll hopefully find helpful and memorable as you go onwards in your careers. Are you up for that? Then you're just the kind of people that I want to share these stories with. My first story concerns an unexpected twist in my engineering education and the impact it had on my career afterwards. When I was an undergraduate here at UWA, the electronic engineering department nearby had a VAX mini computer. It was the size of a large refrigerator, and it itself was actually stored in a big refrigerated room. And it connected to 30 amazing green screen teletype computer terminals, and it was running all off that one computer at a blistering speed of 3 megahertz back in the day. It gives you some idea of how old I am. This VAX mini computer ran an early but pretty advanced form of Unix that seemed very sophisticated to all of us back then. And actually, it was light years ahead of anything else that was around. Even today, I use a descendant of that operating system on my own Mac. And as a self-described geek, I fell in love with that VAX and the power of it being connected to the internet. The internet wasn't like the World Wide Web you see today, but it was a character-based universe where you actually had to memorize your own paths to get to the University of California, Berkeley. You had to remember the locations of all the computers in between you and that university. And it was just addictive. I loved doing it. And actually, to the likely detriment of my engineering grades, sorry, John, I spent a lot of time there learning how to code in C, so I could actually flex the native Unix programming environment, and I used the early internet to discover new software and content, just really living on quite remote computers all over the world. It seems trivial today, but back then it was absolutely novel and I say, addictive. It was great fun. It was also a serendipitous development for me because I had discovered something that I truly loved to do. And it was something that my symbolically oriented brain really lapped up. I found that I was good and fast at writing software, and I discovered I could contract out those skills on a part-time basis to nearby companies, which is exactly what I did, mid-degree, well before completing my final engineering year. Then when I finally did graduate, I got immediate employment with one of the local 2 up-and-coming Perth wireless technology startups that were based in Perth in the early 1990s, and suddenly I was a graduate software engineer working in a real company full-time. Those so-called wasted or fun hours of working outside my official studies allowed me to develop valuable transferable skills. And there were the skills that the university or the companies external to UWA really wanted. If I hadn't gotten distracted and entranced by those early technological marvels, I may never have followed that path, which I ultimately chose, that of being a sort of software-focused telecommunications engineering career that I've been pursuing ever since. So my first message to you is quite simple. Find something you love to do for work. To echo Steve Jobs, work is going to eat up a substantial fraction of your waking hours, so you better find something that you love doing. And if you find yourself in a role where you don't love it, keep looking and don't settle. My second story involves developing balance to complement those hard technical skills you've acquired now that you are graduating from university. And another thing I want to start by talking about is another big distraction for me at university from my engineering studies was the rich social life on the UWA campus. You could probably see a little bit of a pattern developing here. As a fresher, I was given a volunteer job to coordinate all of the college clubs and society stunts for the annual Prosh Parade and Prosh event that happens at the beginning of each year. Despite having no experience at organising that kind of thing, I managed to master the task, and we all had a pretty good prosh that year. Lots of really cool stunts all through the Perth CBD. And soon afterwards, I was asked by some students if I'd consider running on their tickets at the forthcoming Guild elections. I was a pretty quiet and pretty introverted student back then, so I kept on saying no. Eventually, somebody finally said, "Why don't you just at least turn up to one of the Guild meetings and see what it's all about?" So my natural curiosity, I triumphed over my then natural introversion, and I agreed to attend a Guild Council meeting as an observer. I was quickly hooked by the quality of the people that were there and the sort of ideas that they were discussing, and I almost decided on the spot to run for Guild Council seat that year. I ended up on a ticket with a charismatic law student called Mike Rennie, who was the immediate past president, who ended up becoming a Rhodes Scholar and eventually the head of McKinsey Australia. And during my time being in the Guild, I won a few elections, and whereas I'd started engineering as this quiet, introverted teenager, over a couple of years I'd honed my public speaking skills, and more importantly, acquired skills to deal with people and sell them on ideas and persuade them of the merits of a new idea. And when I graduated from UWA and joined that local technology startup, those soft people skills proved more valuable to me than I could ever imagine. The startup I had joined had around 90 employees at the time, and had grown rapidly, but it was at a dysfunctional state. I vividly remember in the second week after I started, I remember finding to my surprise that our company's operation director was in the company cellar. The cellar was where we had all of the electronic parts and components and effectively our storeroom. And he was literally hiding in that cellar from the wife of my immediate manager, who had stormed into the office that morning demanding why her husband had had to work 90 to 100 hours per week for the last couple of months. The reality of that business was that all of the various functions, engineering, operations, marketing, sales and manufacturing, had very poor communication with each other and coordination. And even I, as a relatively green graduate at the time, could see that. The situation was leading to people working crazy hours and actually in many cases just burning out. This continued on for about a year, but by then I'd somehow found my bearings, and I had also by then built up a pretty good network with all the senior managers in the company, covering each of those functional silos. And using the skills that I learnt in my previous Guild experience, I started conversations with those managers and effectively lobbied them to create buy-in for a new product management function that would provide critical coordination between all of the departments. I even had to go outside the chain of command. I had to bypass the head of my engineering department. He saw this role as unnecessary effort. He saw it as potentially undermining his authority, and he resisted my campaign for change as much as he could. But at the end of the day, there was the power of my idea, coupled with a motivated young engineer who understood weirdly well how to influence senior managers, and resistance was futile. A few months later, my company happened to be acquired by a big Sydney firm, and our senior managers at the time then were asked for their input on what the company could do better. To a person, they offered up my product management idea, and also graciously credited me as the one who'd come up with the idea originally. The prize for sticking my head above the parapet and calling out what I could see would be a big improvement for the business was that I was commissioned as one of the 2 inaugural product managers with a nice pay increase and suddenly in charge of several marketing people and 24 engineers, a lot of them who were a lot more senior than me. And this is about 1 year out of engineering school. It was a steep learning curve, but I worked hard at becoming better in that role. And within 3 years, my product line had tripled revenues and achieved significant project sales all around the world in places like Moscow, Shanghai, Botswana. And if I'd never attended that first Guild Council meeting, which set me on the path to learning those soft skills, I shudder what I might have become today. Getting involved with a social organisation like the Guild, where you had to deal with the challenge of persuading others with the merits of ideas, it gave me critical, soft and persuasive skills at an early stage that helped me advance rapidly up the career ladder, and it gave me all the confidence that I eventually need to also start my own companies. My message to you from this life lesson is to start, if you haven't already, on working on developing these soft skills to complement your hard technical skills, in particular focusing on your social and persuasive skills. As businesses fragment and become smaller and more agile, and as startups become more of the norm, the need for you to hone these soft skills becomes more and more urgent. you'll be dealing with people, not just with technology problems, but you'll be dealing with people in teams and organizations, and it's absolutely critical that you learn how to master those interactions as well. I don't think this means giving up on your technical skills, and I'd argue because of the way we are seeing the world today, with actually an accelerating rate of change in the world, it's not just change is constant, change is actually accelerating. You are almost forced into a mode of lifelong learning. It's a balancing act. So I'd argue you shouldn't give up on or focus just on soft skills or hard skills, but try to keep them both in balance. And my third message finally is, what tools can you use to create an open stance to that accelerating pace of change? And I have a quote which I would like to tell you, which really exemplifies the point that I'm trying to make here. In the beginner's mind, there are many opportunities. In the expert mind, there are only a few. And it's a quote from Shunryu Suzuki, who was one of the first Zen practitioners to bring Zen Buddhism to the US in the late 1960s. And I guess the point he's trying to say here is, one of the problems with developing deep ongoing expertise in a technical field is that it can lead to a hardening of your preconceived ideas, not just in that field, but maybe in life generally. Change, by definition, disrupts preconceived ideas. We're in a world of rapid change. So if you cling too much to your existing ideas, it can and it likely will make you closed to that change. I've personally witnessed this calcification of mind, as I call it, in senior engineers that I've worked with, where their ability to cope with new ideas can often be in inverse proportion to their experience level. But instead, just as an idea, consider a young person introduced fresh into a new situation. Their mind is blank, or maybe not nearly blank, but they're not knowing what to expect, will be ready and open to accept new possibilities. That beginner is probably far more likely to adapt to that novel situation than a wizened, older, more experienced person might be. This is the beginner's mind approach. So, as you develop expertise, do not fall into the trap of intellectualization, where you think you know better and potentially become closed to such new ideas. But instead, try to work diligently on training your mind to remain open, like my hand, to new ideas and concepts, even as you age and you're no longer the youngest in the room. So my final message to you is this. Please continue to develop your technical skills. You are sure going to need them. But maybe also consider how you train your mind explicitly to remain open to new things and keep being accepting, pliable, and open to all the change that our accelerating world is offering. I think this is absolutely critical for you, especially as you develop more and more expertise in your chosen field. Please don't close up. So to sum up, find something you love to do, or keep searching until you do find it. Don't settle. Don't remain in a job where you're not happy. Build complementary soft skills that will help you work better in teams and organizations. This is nearly as critical because your technical skills will take you so far, but as you advance through organizations, those softer skills become more and more important. And finally, develop and cultivate what I call a beginner's mindset to help you cope with that accelerating pace of change that we're currently seeing. In closing, I wish you all the very best for your future selves, your relationships, and your careers. And I can't wait to see how you will take advantage of the tremendous opportunities that I'm sure will open up for you after your graduation. And I'd like to offer you each again my heartfelt congratulations on achieving this key milestone of graduating from the University of Western Australia. Thank you.